All right, we go from the Pope to John Kasich, whatever. Anyway, the Republican presidential candidate, governor of the fine state of Ohio, joining me right now, John Kasich. Very good to have you, Governor. Well, let it come down. As a you grew up a Catholic, right?
Yeah, you know what? I was an altar boy at a very young age. And then one day the altar boy didn't show up in the church, and they said, get out there and lead the folks as a commentator. And I started doing that when I was in, the 9th grade. And but here's the funny story, Neil. The priest was coming down off the altar one Sunday, and there was one thing I wouldn't do, which was sing. And there was nobody singing. I announced the closing hymn, and he comes down off the altar, and I look at the organist. I said, stop the organ. Why don't you people sing? You know, Jesus loves when people sing. Pick up the prayer books, turn to page 42, and sing the closing hymn. Priest turns around, he walks out. I tell the organist, go ahead and play. A few more people sing. I'm walking out. A lady walks up to me. She said, you know, I love to sing the closing hymn. Could you give us the right page the next time?
So that was your first brush. But you're now an Anglican.
Yeah.
What got you away from Catholicism?
Well, you know, at the time, my mother was very Bible-driven. And there was a point in time when the Catholics did not really spend a lot of time, you know, in the Bible studying the Scripture. And my mother had a profound influence on me. And when she died, she was a Episcopalian. And the people that tended to me when my parents died, they were Episcopalian.
When they were killed.
Yeah, they were killed by a drunk driver. Yeah. And then, you know, I've kind of, it doesn't matter, but I love this Pope. And look, I got to tell you, Neil, we're all flawed, okay? But what this Pope's doing is he's throwing open the doors.
Donald Trump isn't.
Pardon?
Donald Trump isn't. Maybe you are.
Well, he's throwing open the doors of the church. And you know what he's saying? It's about love. It's about grace, it's about forgiveness, and it's about potential to live a life greater than yourself. And this guy, I mean, look, I know he's controversial and everything, but his message is one of the do's about religion, not the don'ts.
You know, what I remember most at the first debate, the Fox debate, when you were asked a question about gay marriage, you said it's the law of the land, you'd been to a gay wedding, and you sort of famously shrugged your shoulders and said,
well, I said, God offers me unconditional love. I have to offer the same to my family and to my friends.
That got applause from the crowd, and that was a conservative crowd, and it made me start thinking, well, maybe Governor Kasich has found another way for Republicans to handle this issue, other type of issues.
Well, look, I have to tell you, Neil, that we in this nation have to begin to live lives greater than ourselves and to be centers of healing and justice. Now, maybe that's not a big campaign line. That's not what motivates me. But if that can connect with some people, and I'm not a believer in shoving religion down anybody's throat. I've written a book about my faith. But it is about focusing on the do's, humility, living a life greater than yourself, rather than the don'ts that we hear so much about. But you had to explain that
when it came to policy, right? That you were more generous with Medicaid. You explained it as having a little money now to save a lot of money later.
There's two parts, because, you know, I've been really, you know, this is really a hot issue. Number one is there's an arithmetic side to this. If I can get people out of prison and into the workplace, if they're drug addicted, mentally ill, what could be better than that? And secondly, I think there's a moral part of this, because you don't ignore the widows, the downtrodden, the homeless. Now, people don't have to do it my way, but what I say to them is, okay, you don't have to do it with what I did with Medicaid, but what are you going to do? Because locking mentally ill people, bipolar, you know, person who's out here and gets in a tangle with a policeman or shoplifts or something, putting them in prison?
No, your explanation made perfect sense. But here's where it's difficult to break through in such a crowded field of debaters, right? And I know you tried, and certainly in the last debate you tried.
Well, the last debate was,
ridiculous. It was too many. Now you have Scott Walker out. He was all but saying others should bow out as well to clear the stage. Was he putting you in that camp? What was he doing?
No, I have no idea. But
what did you think of it? What happened to it?
Well, I think I heard that he was kind of running his own campaign, you know, and that never works. But here's what I think. I think he's a great guy. He's 47 years old, extraordinarily young. I remember when I tried this when I was 47. I wasn't ready to do that. But he will have another chance, because as he gets older, he will become more and more centered on the things that really matter to him. And look, I know him well, and he's a terrific guy. And it just, you know, he ran out of money.
But do you think others will follow? The pressure is going to
No, it's all about
push others
money.
out?
You know,
Yeah.
you run out of money, you're not going to go
But he was
into
saying,
debt.
obviously, we have to unite around an alternative to the front runner, who is Donald Trump. Is he right?
Well, Neil, the way I look at it is, let me do my thing. It's like golf. I play my own game. I'm not looking at anybody else, and we're doing
I'm
well.
the same way with miniature golf.
We're rising in New Hampshire, as you know.
Do you need to win New Hampshire?
I need to do very well there.
What's very well?
That's a process question. I'm going to give you my campaign manager's
lawyer?
number. I could be one, couldn't
Yes,
I?
you could.
Because these are good answers.
Could I ask you, while I have you here, Governor, Hillary Clinton has announced that she opposes the construction of the Keystone pipeline. Does that surprise you?
No, I think Hillary, look, I've been very, very, kind of gloves off, and she attacks me all the time. And this is a person who lives in a glass house. I mean, starting with all this goofy stuff she had in her house there, that her own server and all that stuff, and opposed to Keystone Pipeline. Why? You know why? Because she runs a campaign where she appeals to certain interest groups. It's all segmented out. Where's
Well, maybe
the big
you should
message?
be flattered that she keeps singling you out.
Oh, listen, they've made it clear that I'm the one they most worry about in the general election. You've heard it. It's been reported on the air here. Look, she's a segmented person, and the American people are going to look for somebody with a big vision about how to create jobs and balance budgets and restore defense and all these things, Neil. And so I think she's absolutely beatable. To come out against that pipeline.
But now, she obviously did something to Bernie Sanders like, Governor. He tweeted out, I'm glad that Hillary Clinton finally has made a decision on the Keystone Pipeline, that I welcome her opposition, so that she took the environmentalist side, not the union side, which wanted all those jobs.
Well, she finds herself, when you don't know what you're really for, it's hard to stand up in the wind. I mean, one thing as a reformer, which I've been all of my lifetime, I know what I stand for. I mean, there's a couple things you bring up to me, Neil, and I wouldn't, I haven't made up my mind, but I know what I think on most things. And if you don't know what you think, you twist in the wind, and that's what you see, back and forth. Who am I going to appeal to?
Well, that was the rap against Governor Walker, right? Fairly or not, he just was not ready for the bright lights, the Klieg lights of the scrutiny about how do you feel on these policies.
Well, I hope he will be, but some of them are gotcha questions, Neil. Some of them are like,
I hear you,
let me
Governor,
try to
me
get
ask
you.
These are two establishment figures, if you think about it. Governor Walker, Governor Perry, with accomplished records, consequential records as governors, they're out.
Yeah. Well, but
do you ever feel
at the end
vulnerable?
of the day,
being in an experience as a governor doesn't count.
The one time I got to speak with one gulp of air in the last debate in that demolition derby, I pointed to the plane behind me where I had actually been on the plane with Ronald Reagan. And you know what I said? At the end of the day, people want the plane to be landed. I know how to get the reform agenda through, Neil, because I've done it in Washington and in Ohio throughout my whole lifetime.
What did you think of the back and forth? Governor Christie made fun of it between Carly Fiorina and Donald Trump.
In the beginning of the debate, I had to interrupt everybody and say, if I were at home watching, I'd turn it off. I just think it was chaotic. And look, it's a hard job.
You all have to talk and sell yourselves. So what was wrong with what they were doing?
Well, you can't keep interrupting people. I mean, in the 180 minutes, I'm not going to complain, but I got limited direct questions. And when you can't
Sounds
speak,
like you're whining.
It does, so I'm going to knock it off right now. God bless him for doing a debate, and you're going to be in the next one.
The FBI
and I'm going to do everything I can
to embarrass me,
to make sure that you, Neil, are going to ask me a lot of easy questions, not tough ones. Now, talk about dropping out. It could be you, because I used to work at this place, and everybody's on the line. The ratings go down. You never know.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Well, you've just assured some very nasty questions in this All right, John Kasich. And
it's
again,
always great.
It is always very good having you, Governor. I do want to bring some people up to date.